And dear students, now we move towards the fifth part of the lecture based on investment, saving, consumption and investment. So first we will do that what we have studied up till now. So there is a brief review of the part 1, part 2 and part 3 and part 4. So what we have studied up till now is that first we have studied the consumption function. So the consumption function, what is consumption function? The consumption function relates the level of consumption to the level of disposable income. So here that means consumption function is dependent on your any individual's income. The next we have studied the saving function. Saving function relates savings to disposable income because what is saved equals what is not consumed. ठीक है, whatever you have consumed, like if you have an income of 1 lakh and you have spent 75,000 on your consumption, and the leftover part is your saving. Saving and consumption schedule are mirror images. So if you know about your consumption, you easily compute your saving. So either you compute saving or consumption, you will get the answer. That's why we called it a mirror images. Okay, so again here in saving function, saving is depends on your income. Then we have studied the marginal propensity to consume. We knew that the term marginal means the additional or extra. So here it is also known as MPC. MPC is the amount of extra consumption generated by an extra dollar of disposable income. Graphically, it is given by the slope of the consumption function. On the other hand, the marginal propensity to save, which is also known as MPS, is the extra saving generated by an extra dollar of disposable income. Graphically, this is the slope of the saving schedule. Okay, because the part of each dollar of disposable income that is not consumed is necessarily saved, so it is also known as MPS identity 1 equal to MPC. So that's why we called it mirror images. Okay, now up till now we have studied a person or household's consumption patterns or saving patterns. Now we move towards to the national consumption behavior. Okay, so up to now we have examined the budget patterns and consumption behavior of typical families at different incomes. Like we have the example from A to G, like when someone have the income 24,000, and then if someone have the income 25,000 and so on, then what are their consumption and saving patterns. Now we move towards to the national consumption behavior. So let's now consider consumption for the entire nation. This transition from household behavior to national trends exemplifies the methodology of macroeconomics. You know that in case of macroeconomics, we study the any case study as a whole. Like for example, if we are talking about consumption, we are talking about the consumption of all Pakistani individual. If we are talking about saving, we are talking about the saving patterns in Pakistan. So in case of micro, we study at the minute level, like individual at a micro level, individual household. So here now we are studying, in case of macro, we study the patterns of consumption and saving as a whole, as a nation. So this transition from household behavior to national trends exemplify the methodology of macroeconomics. We begin by examining the economic activity on the individual level and then add up or aggregate the totality of individuals to study the way the overall economy operates. So consumption behavior is crucial for understanding both short-run business cycles and long-term economic growth. In short run, consumption is a major component of aggregate spending. When consumption changes sharply, the change is likely to affect output and employment through its impact on aggregate demand. In the last lecture we have studied the concept of inflation, where we have studied that how aggregate demand impact the behavior impact on the supply side. So in case of demand pull inflation, where the demand is greater than aggregate supply, and in case of cost push inflation, where the supply, there is a shortage of supply due to increase in cost of inputs, or there is increase in the or any reason like taxation or etc. So here in this mechanism the effect of consumption is affect the output and employment through its impact on the aggregate demand. So aggregate demand is a channel through which the output and employment will affect. So the mechanism will be described in the chapters on Keynesian's macroeconomics. This concept basically given by the Keynesians. Additionally, consumption behavior is crucial because what is not consumed, that is what is saved. Okay, like whatever you out of your 1 lakh income, if you are consuming as I said earlier 75,000, so of course the leftover part is your saving. So that's why we said what is not consumed, that is what is saved, is available for investment in new capital goods, and capital serves as driving force behind long-term economic growth. Means if whatever you are saving now, you are investing, that saving are part of your investment. Means you are if that saving are contributing to the investment. So now through this investment we are generating new capital goods, and capital, what capital do? Capital serves as a driving force behind long-term economic growth. So consumption and saving behavior are key to understanding economic growth and the business cycle. So we already studied that what are the determinants of consumption. Whenever you a question asked from you what are the determinants of consumption, you should know that what are the determinants of consumption. So we begin by analyzing the major forces that affect the consumer's spending. What factors in a nation's life and livelihood set the pace of its consumption outlays? You have to answer me during regarding this question during the online session. So all of you should I'm repeating this question again. We begin by analyzing the major forces that affect consumer spending. Okay, so what factor in a nation's life and livelihood set the pace of its consumption and outlays? So you have to answer me that what factors in the nation's life and livelihood set the pace of its consumption outlays. So now we move toward our next topic. This is the before we have just reviewed the brief review of the definition that we have studied in part 1, part 2 and part 3 and 4. So now I move toward to the concept of permanent income and the life cycle model of consumption. Okay, so what is permanent income and the life cycle model of the consumption? Basically it is also known as permanent income hypothesis and factor that affect the consumer spending. Okay, so here basically what we are going to do is, the simplest theory of consumption uses only the current year income to predict the consumption expenditure. Consider the following examples which suggest why other factors might also be important. If bad weather, for example, okay, we know that there are some specific factors that affect the consumption patterns of the consumers. For example, if there are a decrease in your income, so of course your disposable income, of course your consumption would be decrease. If there is increase in your disposable income, of course their income going to be increased. But there are few factors that affect outside the model, that we are that are not in the model, but it comes out of the blue. Like for example, if we took the case of any farmers, and for example if bad weather destroys a crop, okay, farmers will draw upon their previous saving to finance consumption. Okay, so this year crop is destroyed due to the bad weather. Now what farmers are going to do? They use the previous year saving to do their consumption of the current year. So in these circumstances, people are in effect asking, given my current and future income, how much can I consume today without incurring the excessive debts? So basically that is why we call it the permanent income hypothesis and life cycle model of the consumption. Like how your consumption patterns changes with the passage of time. It also includes your expectations of the future, and it also includes the factors that affect the permanent income hypothesis from the outside the model. So these, like weather is the outside factor. So due to weather, income of the farmers is affected badly. So they draw the previous year saving in order to do the current year consumption. So what is permanent income? Permanent income is the trend level of income. So permanent income, again listen carefully, permanent income is the trend level of income, that is income after removing temporary or transient influences due to windfall gains or losses. According to the permanent income theory, consumption responds primarily to permanent income. So okay, the we like for example, due to some reason you get the bonus, like your permanent income is 1 lakh and you get the bonus of 25,000 due to your excellent performance or due to any reason. So or any festival, due to any festival or religious festival, the company gives you the bonus of 25,000. So it is not a permanent, this bonus is not a permanent, it is that type of bonuses or you will get occasionally, not on a regular basis. So what is your permanent income? Basically your permanent income is 1 lakh you get on a monthly basis. So all your schedule regarding how to spend that, how much income should be spent, how much income should be saved, it's based on your permanent income, not based on your bonus, lucky bound or anything etc. So all the planning regarding how to spend your income is based on your permanent income, not based on it did not include bonus, lucky bound or anything or one time reward. This approach implies that consumers do not respond equally to all income shocks, like increase if you get any lucky bound or any bonus. So what it is known as for example like income shock. Like before your income is 1 lakh but now your income is 1,25,000 after included the bonus. So it is an income shock. So it is not permanent income, it is a one time or two time thing that so it did not include in your permanent income. If a change in income, so this is I hope you understand the difference between permanent income and the income that and the shock in your income. So shock in your income, basically bonus, lucky bound and etc etc. So now move forward. If a change in income appears permanent, such as being promoted to a secure and high paying job, people are likely to consume a larger fraction of the increase in income. So now for example, now you are promoted to, like now before you are on grade 18, now you are grade 19, so of course your income is also increased. So now it is a permanent increase your income. So now your again now your consumption expenditures change, your saving patterns change. So because it is based on, because your permanent income increase, it is not a one time increase your income, now it is a permanent increase your income. So that's why now your consumption schedule is changed, consumption and saving schedule is changed because your permanent income is changed. So you have to understand that there is a difference between income shocks and permanent income. So your basically change in your consumption pattern and saving pattern based on your permanent income, not on your income shocks. So I hope you understand this thing. So now we move towards the life cycle hypothesis. The life cycle hypothesis assumes that the slide I'm going to show you, the determinants of consumption, it is basically the part of determinant of consumption, and you know that the determinant of consumption based on permanent income and always based on permanent income, not based on income shocks, because it is a one time thing. Now we are moved towards the life cycle hypothesis. The life cycle hypothesis assumes that people save in order to smooth their consumption over their lifetime. What is life cycle hypothesis? Life cycle hypothesis assume that people save in order to smooth their consumption over their lifetime. Because like for example, right now your consumption expenditure, for example 1 lakh, so people wants that this pattern is continued like after retirement, like after when you have no job, so you are able to spend the same life pattern when you are retired as well. So the life cycle hypothesis based on this concept. For example, one important objective of the life cycle hypothesis is that a person is want to have an adequate retirement income. So hence people tend to save while working so as to build up a nest egg for retirement and then spend out of their accumulated saving in their twilight years. Means when they are retired, so they can spend their income when they are not working, but they are still have the enough savings, so they can spend their life smoothly with the help of those savings that they have saved during their permanent income that they got on a monthly basis or a weekly basis. So one implication of life cycle hypothesis is that a program like Social Security, which provides a generous income supplement for the retirement, will reduce saving by middle-aged workers since they no longer need to save as much for the retirement. So in the life cycle hypothesis, one thing, like in many developed countries, they have the in case of Pakistan as well, that we have the pension gratuity after retirement. Government gives you the pension gratuity if you are a government servant. So this type of benefits also restrict the consumer from the life cycle hypothesis. Now during the middle age, due to these offers like pension, social security programs have a negative effect on the saving in life cycle model. Now consumers in the middle age, instead of saving more, they are spending because they already know that government is already cutting the some amount from their permanent income, so in order to facilitate them in their after retirement. So that's why the trend in case of saving is quite low due to the these types of benefits like pension and social security. So this thing reduced the savings during the middle age, because people knew that in the end of the time, basically the purpose of saving is that they should have some retirement income when they are retired, and they have the smooth consumption pattern after the retirement. Due to these things like pension and social security programs, people already have that kind of opportunity. So instead of saving during their middle age, they are consuming more and saving more, because they already know that government are cutting some amount of money from their permanent income. So in the end of their job, they have some amount of money so that they can spend their life smoothly after retirement. So I hope you understand this thing. Then there is a wealth and other influences. A further important determinant of the amount of consumption is wealth. Okay, keep in your mind, but these are all the determinants that affect the consumption. Like first we have discussed the permanent income, and we have discussed that our people are only makes plan regarding their consumption expenditure and saving based on their permanent income. Okay, first we have, they are not distracted by the income shocks like bonus and lucky bound and any bonds, or they get money from somewhere else out of the blue for a one time. So these are the basically determinants that affect the consumption. So it is basically reflect to the consumption pattern. So that's why we called it the determinants of consumption. The first determinant of consumption, we have discussed the permanent income hypothesis. Then we have discussed the life cycle hypothesis, the how previously people think about the life cycle hypothesis. Now due to the pension and social security programs, this determinant is also affected by pension and social security program, because people knew that due to these programs they have the enough money after retirement and they can spend their life smoothly. So during the middle age, people are spending more than previously. So that's why this is the one of the distracting factor, and it has a negative effect on the saving. Then we are discuss the another factor, which is wealth and other influences. So wealth, permanent income, and then in the life cycle hypothesis topic we have covered, and now we are discussing the another factor, which is wealth, how wealth affect the consumption. So wealth, consider two consumers, each earning $50,000 per year. One has $200,000 in the bank, while the other has no saving at all. The first person may consume part of wealth, while the second person has no wealth to draw down. The fact that higher wealth leads to higher consumption is called the wealth effect. I am going to repeat this example. Listen carefully. Consider two consumers, each earning $50,000 per year. One consumer has $200,000 in the bank, while the other has no saving at all. The first person may consume part of wealth, while the second has no wealth to draw down. The fact that higher wealth leads to higher consumption is called the wealth effect. Wealth usually changes slowly. Keep in your mind, bache, that wealth usually changes slowly from year to year. However, when wealth rises or declines sharply, this may lead to major changes in the consumption spendings. Okay, so in your book they have given the examples, few examples in Samuelson book. You need to read all those examples and all these theories again, so you have a better understanding regarding the concept. So next we have the national consumption function. Okay, here in national consumption function. So what is national consumption function? Having reviewed the theory of consumption behavior, we conclude that determinants are complex, including disposable income, wealth, and expectation of future income. Okay, so what are the determinants? And these determinants are complex. First determinant is disposable income, then wealth, and the expectations of future income. We can plot the simplest consumption function in figure you are seeing in your PPT, the figure number 21.6. Here a consumption function for the United States from 1970 to 2008. The figure shows a sector plot. This is the sector plot of personal disposable income and consumption. Okay, so we can plot the simplest consumption function. The sector diagram shows data for the period 1970 to 2008, with each point representing the level of consumption and disposable income for a given year. So in the horizontal axis you have the personal disposable income, billions of dollars, and on the vertical axis you have the personal consumption expenditure. So in the horizontal axis you have the leftover income after taxes and your consumption expenditures. So in addition, you might draw a line in figure 21.6 through a sector plot and label it fitted consumption function. Fitted consumption function. This is you draw a line and it is known as fitted consumption function. What we call it? Fitted consumption function. This fitted consumption function shows how closely consumption has followed the disposable income over the period shown. Here we have shown the period 1970, 1990 and 2008. So the data is from 1970 to 2008. So look closely to this diagram. The fitted consumption function shows how closely consumption has followed the disposable income over the period shown. In fact, economic historians have found that a close relationship between disposable income, and consumption holds back to the 19th century. So the previous historians find out the close relationship between consumption and disposable income. So with the help of this diagram you can simply understand that. And the diagram of the sector plot also shows the MPC. You have to try to do this by yourself. The data I think so given in the table. If the data is available, you can easily compute the MPC or MPS. If you are calculating MPC, the MPS is quite easy to calculate. So This is the consumption function of the United States from 1970 to 2008. So determinants of consumption already we have discussed are complex, like disposable income, wealth and future income. Consumption, always keep in your mind what this diagram basically shows, that the consumption has a direct or relationship or a positive relationship with disposable income. Why we said it is a direct relationship? Direct relationship or positive relationship means that if there is increase in your income, then the consumption expenditures are also increased. If there is decrease in your disposable income, the consumption expenditures are also decreased. So this relationship is known as direct relationship or a positive relationship. So this is the national income function. So fitted consumption line shows how closely it linked with the disposable income. So next diagram shows the declining trend of personal saving rate. In the previous slide we have showed the relationship between disposable income and the consumption expenditure. Now we are moving towards the declining trend of personal saving. So here the figure is you can see in your book figure number 21.7, which shows the personal saving rate has declined after rising slowly over the post-war period. Here you say, always keep in your mind, bache, during the any pandemic or any wars or any situation, any natural disaster or natural calamity, there is the trend in saving must be disturbed. So you can see after rising slowly over the post-war period, the personal saving rate took a sharp nosedive after 1990. So here they are showing that during the personal saving rates are declining. First the personal saving rate are increasing and then it is decreasing. Why this dropped along many economies? Because over the long run the growth in a nation's capital stock is largely determined by its national saving rate. So what happens when the saving rate is declining? That means that declining saving rate will affect the long-term growth of any nation, because due to negative saving or very low rate of saving, the national capital stock is largely disturbed because it is highly dependent on the saving rate of any nation. So when there is a very little or very low increase in your capital score, that means your long run growth is also affected by this fact. So if any nation that have the higher saving rate or personal saving rate, that means they will grow sharply, because that saving rate are used for the capital stock. And when you have a very little or very low rate of savings, that means then you are that nation is spending very less on capital stock, and alternatively they have very low economic growth. So national saving is composed of private and government saving that we have studied earlier. A high saving nation has a rapidly growing capital stock and enjoys a rapid growth in its potential output. When a nation's saving rate is low, its equipment and factories become obsolete and its infrastructure begins to root away. So that's why always keep in your mind that the saving rate is very important in order to improve the or increase the or higher level of economic growth. So this trend shows that whenever there is due to declining saving rate, of course in the future the growth of that economies will also affected by the low rate of saving. So this is, and then factors, and then we have the factors that affect the personal saving rate. Social security benefits, advancement of financial market, growth of paper world. As we have discussed earlier in the permanent income hypothesis, we have seen that, and the life cycle hypothesis, we have seen that people save a lot of money because they want to smooth after retirement. They want the smooth consumption expenditures when they have no job. So but due to the social security benefits, people knew that that in the end, when they are going to end their job, when they are going to retire, they have the enough money in form of social security, so they are able to spend their life smoothly after the retirement. So that's why people start consuming more and saving less during especially during their middle age. So that's why, due to this factor, social security factor, people are starting saving less and consuming more, because they knew that they, after the retirement, they are secure due to the social security benefits and pension and etc. So this is one of the reason. That's why the people have the nation have the declining trend in the saving rate. And next, the financial market. For most of economic history, financial market had numerous imperfection. People found it hard to borrow funds from for a worthwhile purposes, whether to buy a house, finance an education, or start a business. As financial market developed, so due to after the development of financial market, often with the help of government, new loan instrument allowed people to borrow more easily. One example is the credit cards. You knew that right now every bank, like Seal Bank, Alfla Bank, they are giving the people the credit card. And now although the interest rate is quite high if you are going to buy the things with the help of those credit cards, but the ease of this thing is that you don't go to anyone to get the loan or borrow money from someone. You simply know that you are going to the ATM, you get the money, or if you want to buy something, you just use that card for the time being if you don't have enough money right now. So you utilize that credit cards in the hard time, and then although when you have the enough money, you are going to pay back after 2 months or 3 months. They have the different types of packages. You know that those people are using those credit cards. They knew the functioning of those credit card very well. So the one thing is that face saving, that like you don't need to go somewhere like before. You know that before 50 years, last 50 years before, or like in 1950s, it's quite hard to get the money or borrow the money, and you have to pay the, like you are a slave of that person, and you have to pay back that money. If you are not being able to pay that money on the right time, you have to pay the different type of penalty. You have to give them their land, or etc. So with the ease of the credit cards, you are easily borrow money, get money with the help of credit card. So the financial markets affect the saving rates as well. So so first thing is social security, and the second thing is advancement of financial markets. The detail of that things are given in the Samuelson book. Bache, read carefully that chapter 21. So you will clarify the clarify your concept. You will know better. Like right now you are listening to the video lecture. This video lecture is purely based on your from this chapter. So after reading this chapter, you will have your concept will be more clear and brighter. You are able to understand the concepts more clearly instead of just listening to the video lecture. So bache, one thing more, during the online session in the next week, inshallah, on Saturday, I'm going to upload this video on Saturday, 2nd April, and then we are going to discuss the concepts regarding of this chapter in detail in the next class. So important, it would be great if you people are going to go through this chapter of 21, consumption and investment. So next part is based on our so here the up till now we have just covered the part of consumption, or this chapter is based on consumption and investment. So the next part is your investment, and that part I'm going to discuss in next part. So it is the left only few one slide, I think so, 1 or 2 slides, determinant of investment. 2 or 3 slides are left that I'm going to discuss in the next part. So the this part is I'm